What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Friday, February 9th, 2024, and I have another emergency alert to share with you guys. Right now it is 1:41 p.m. Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have U.S. nuclear forces on high alert this afternoon. What you're looking at here are three U.S. nuclear war command and control planes up in the air and a presidential doomsday plane up in the air. Okay, so very concerning, guys. And we also had a massive amount of NATO reconnaissance over Poland last night. There were half a dozen reconnaissance planes flying over Poland and the Baltic countries last night, which is a huge red flag. Here we have one of the nuclear war command and control planes. These planes are responsible for remotely launching all of our Minuteman III ICBMs, and they also communicate with our submerged nuclear armed submarines. Here's the presidential doomsday plane. It was flying with its transponder off, and it looks like it just turned it on over Illinois, which is also very concerning. Here we have another nuclear war command and control plane, looks to be heading into the Gulf to communicate with some subs over there. And then here we have another nuclear war command and control plane that just came back from Germany. Okay, now I want to give you guys my analysis of the Tucker Carlson interview. I personally think Tucker Carlson is actually a deep cover agent for the CIA. And I'm going to get into that later on in the video on why I think that is. But to summarize, I was expecting Tucker Carlson to go really soft on Putin with the typical pro-Russian, anti-Ukrainian talking points. But actually, if you compare Tucker's interview to Megyn Kelly's interview with Putin, and Megyn Kelly was known to be very anti-Putin, Tucker Carlson was giving Putin tougher questions than Megyn Kelly, which is really unusual for someone who has been extremely defensive of Putin. I mean, he was grilling Putin, okay? I stayed up all night last night watching the interview and rewinding and rewatching multiple segments. I have a whole page of notes that I'm going to read to you, all the main points. But I spent like 5 or 6 hours watching this interview, basically the whole night. And I'm telling you, something was off about Tucker. I think he's a deep cover operative. And what's interesting is Putin actually mentions that Tucker Carlson applied to join the CIA when he was younger and supposedly got rejected. And Putin kind of laughed at that. And you could see that Putin didn't truly trust Tucker, knowing that Tucker applied to the CIA when he was younger. So, what if this whole time Tucker really wasn't truly a journalist, but really a deep cover CIA agent playing the part of being a pro-Russian journalist so he could get closer to Putin and get this interview with him and have the opportunity to sit down for 2 hours with one of America's biggest enemies and sit within 5 feet of Putin and be able to study him for 2 hours, okay, from a distance of 5 feet away. You can learn a lot about somebody's health, somebody's psychological state, just by sitting down with them for 2 hours. I mean, you could see Tucker Carlson was intensely studying Putin's body language, and that's something that CIA agents and intelligence agents around the world are trained to do, including Putin. Okay, they're trained to study body language. Every person who works in intelligence is trained on body language, okay, being able to read body language. But I think Tucker Carlson is either a deep cover operative for the CIA or he's just a normal journalist, but he helps the CIA from time to time. because it's very unusual that he would apply to be a CIA agent when he was younger and then get rejected. I mean, he's a smart guy. Okay, Tucker Carlson's very smart, very determined. I just don't believe that they just rejected him because he was incompetent or whatever. Okay, I don't believe that. But that's just my theory. I'm not saying that that's 100% true, but let me know what you guys think. And I'll show you guys some pictures of Tucker Carlson's facial expressions. And you could just see during the interview how Tucker Carlson was just glued to Putin. And you could see how he was intensely studying Putin's body language. He didn't blink at all. He was like just focused like a laser beam on Putin, trying to look for things. And that's what intelligence agents are trained to do, trying to see if he has any tremors, see if he has any weird spots on his skin, maybe to see, his overall, energy level, and, see, how he looks physically. Does he have, any kind of weird colors on his skin? There's a lot of things you can learn from somebody when you sit with them for 2 hours. Okay. Just want to give that bit of information to you. You don't have to agree with me, but that's what I really truly think. I don't think Tucker Carlson is who people think he thinks he is. I think that he played the part so he could get close to Putin and study him. And also, not just for that, but so he could infiltrate the pro Russian community. Okay. So, not just Putin, but all other pro Russian figures, now they trust him so he can get close to them. He can do interviews with them. The government can study the pro Russian community more. Okay. So that's just my theory. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the interview at the end of the video and give you my detailed analysis. But I really think that Putin has gone mad. I think he's nuts. He was bringing up things from like the 1600s that happened with Poland, and he was bitter about something that happened like 400 years ago with Poland. And it just shows you the depth of Putin's thinking in all this, and how Russia fits into the equation. And he's going back hundreds of years, and he's bitter about things that happened hundreds of years ago. Okay, so we had two more Russian bombers fly towards Alaska yesterday. So that's 5 Russian bombers within 48 hours. And here we have a picture and a press release from NORAD. NORAD said that they detected and tracked 2 Russian military aircraft operating in the Alaskan Defense Identification Zone on February 8th. This is the second time NORAD detected and tracked Russian aircraft in 3 days. Okay. So, guys, I'm telling you, we are on the verge of nuclear war. After watching Putin in this interview, I really think we're on the verge of nuclear war, and I don't think there's anything we can do to change that. I think we will be in a nuclear war no matter who's president. There's no changing that. There's no negotiating out of it. I think it's going to come. It's just inevitable. And based on this interview with Putin, I don't think that anything's going to change, regardless who's the president. And this update was sponsored by Patriot Supply. Guys, Patriot Supply is doing a limited time sale on their 1-year emergency food supply. They're going to drop the price by $700 for this week only. The sale expires February the 11th, 2024. This 1-year emergency food supply has a 25-year shelf life. It's all contained within 24 rugged water-resistant buckets. Free shipping is included. $700 off. To get the deal, go to preparewithnYprepper.com. The link is in the description below this video. They're also doing a discount on the Alexa Pure Pro Water Filtration System. They're doing an $80 discount. Normally the price is $280. They've dropped it down to $200. And this water filtration system filters out bacteria, heavy metals, chemicals, various types of pesticides and agricultural byproducts. And the best thing is that it does not need electricity to work. It's powered by gravity, so you can take this with you anywhere if you're going camping, if you're bugging out, if you lose power at home, okay? Or you could use this every day just for everyday use to purify your well water rather than installing a special treatment system that could cost thousands, okay? So to get the deals, go to preparewithnYprepper.com. The link is in the description below this video. $80 off the Alexa Pure Pro Water Filtration System and $700 off the My Patriot Supply 1-year emergency food supply. Guys, if you buy this thing, you're pretty much set for any scenario. Now, they also have a general store where they sell all kinds of prepping and survival items. They have a wide variety. To get to their general store, when you go to preparewithnYprepper.com, you click on the top of the page, the logo here, My Patriot Supply. Click that logo, and it'll take you to their general store, and they have everything you need. Okay, so check it out, preparewithnYprepper.com. The link is in the description below this video. And we have some major breaking news coming from the sun. There was an X3.4 class solar flare. This is the strongest solar flare in years, and it could potentially cause some outages. We currently have a strong solar storm event right now. We have an R3 blackout. Okay, and R3 is the strongest level of a radio blackout warning put out by NOAA. So this is their official warning here. You can see this sunspot right on the edge of the sun here, partially Earth facing, gave off a very strong flare. An X-class flare is the strongest type of solar flare, and a 3.3 is like a moderately strong X-class flare. So this is very serious, guys. We could see interruptions in communication, radio, massive interruptions. Okay, this is a very strong warning that they're putting out. Okay, strong flare event. Okay, so I'll keep you guys updated on this, but this is very serious. And I want to just show you guys some of the reconnaissance over Poland last night. You can see multiple reconnaissance planes here. This is insane, guys. Okay, and remember, just a few days ago, Poland shot down 2 Russian cruise missiles, and Poland has set up an air navigation warning for the entire eastern half of their country, from the Russian border all the way down to the Ukrainian border. And now we have this massive reconnaissance going on. I don't think I've ever seen this much reconnaissance over Poland. I mean, here you have an AWACS plane that was looping over northwest Poland. You have a Swedish reconnaissance plane here that was going up and down along the Belarus border multiple times. You have an American recon plane that was going back and forth along the Polish-Russian border many, many times, and it also circled around Kaliningrad here. And then there was another American reconnaissance plane that went all the way up to Finland, to the Lapland. Okay, so this is crazy, guys. And we also had a Swedish reconnaissance plane that was patrolling the Gotland Island area in the central Baltic Sea. There was also an Estonian reconnaissance plane patrolling their shoreline, the northwestern part of Estonia there. And here we have a closer look. You can see that one Swedish reconnaissance plane near the Gotland Island area. And the Gotland Island is really critical because Russia could try to take over Gotland. Okay, that's been the biggest fear for Sweden, because Sweden is not in NATO yet. And what Russia could do is they could try to seize control of this island, and they could establish missile systems there, and that would threaten all of NATO and the entire Baltic Sea. So that's always been a fear of Sweden's and NATO's. That's why they want to get Sweden into NATO as quickly as possible. And then here you can see the Estonian recon plane patrolling their shoreline there. And then there was also a U.S. Army plane that was flying to Warsaw last night. It could be a VIP plane, I'm not too sure, but it flew to Warsaw and then it went to Finland. Very strange. It was a Beech C-12 U-3 Huron plane with the call sign Duke 31, and it went from Wiesbaden to Warsaw, and then it went from Warsaw to Gdansk, and from Gdansk it went to Finland. Very strange flight. And here you can see that American recon plane. Actually, it was a British recon plane that went all the way up to the Finnish Lapland, and then it went back. And you could see that U.S. Army plane that went to Finland. So lots of reconnaissance going on. And here we have a lot of reconnaissance going on over South Korea. This was late last night. Multiple U.S. Army planes here. We had a Black Hawk. We had some beach guardrails, several beach guardrails doing reconnaissance patterns. Okay. And the Israeli army is continuing to send reinforcements of tanks and armored vehicles to the Philadelphia Rafah axis. This is basically the Egyptian Gaza border. Netanyahu wants to seal that border so this way Hamas can't smuggle in weapons and resources through there. And Egypt has said that that's a red line if Israel deploys forces there. So there's video footage on social media showing multiple Israeli tanks heading towards Rafah. That's that border crossing where all the international humanitarian aid is going through. And in Switzerland, apparently an Iranian asylum seeker armed with a knife and an axe held 15 people hostage on a train between Balms and Yverdon les Bains for more than 4 hours until Switzerland special forces intervened and they stormed the train and killed him. Okay. So, very serious situation, and we could see more stuff like that happen here in the US. That's why you have to carry your self defense tools and be aware of your surroundings at all times. Okay. And know how to identify cover and concealment. And the U.S. military base in the Al Omar oil field in eastern Syria came under attack this morning. So that's the second time that this base has come under attack in the last 2 days. It came under attack yesterday and then again today. So we'll see if the Biden administration is going to do anything about it. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has vowed that he would put an end to South Korea if North Korea was attacked, state media said Friday. If the enemy dared to use force against our country, we will make a bold decision that will change history and will not hesitate to mobilize all the superpowers to put an end to them, Kim said, according to the Korean Central News Agency. All right, and we do know that the U.S. Is currently conducting massive exercises in Guam. They moved 4 B-52s to Guam, and they're doing all kinds of exercises with France, Japan, Australia, and South Korea. Okay, they're practicing delivering bombs and nuclear weapons. All right. And there were some Israeli airstrikes on Damascus today, supposedly targeting positions of the IRGC, which is very interesting. And the Netherlands has added extra security to the Israeli embassy in Hague on Thursday following a threat that must be taken extremely seriously. The city's mayor, Jan van Zanen, said in a statement confirming earlier reports in Dutch media. Van Zanen did not say how long these measures would remain in place. Dutch press agency ANP added that the embassy has been cordoned off and the Israeli embassy could not be reached for comment. Okay, so a threat that must be taken extremely seriously in the Netherlands to the Israeli embassy. Absolutely insane. Want to just read to you some of my notes here from the Tucker Carlson interview, but look at Tucker Carlson's face. This was when Putin was going back to 1654 and talking about how Russia made a deal with Poland after Russia got into a massive war with Poland. They made a deal that Russia would keep the eastern half of Ukraine and Poland would get the western half. So Putin's going all the way back to 1654, and you could see Tucker Carlson's face here. You know, he has this look of shock in his eyes, like wow, this guy is nuts. You know, like Tucker Carlson looked like he was just disturbed by what Putin was saying in front of him. And it's kind of hard to capture it in a screenshot, but you can really see in his eyes, like, wow, this guy's going that far back. But what's interesting, like I said, is that Putin mentioned that Tucker applied to work at the CIA, and you can kind of see, based on Putin's body language, that he didn't really trust Tucker once Putin found out that he applied to work for the CIA. Because you got to remember, Putin is a former spy. Okay, he went to the top spy school in Russia. He knows multiple languages. He knows how to read body language. He knows all the ins and outs of intelligence and all the different tricks they use. I mean, he was in the KGB as a colonel, so he worked with the CIA. Well, not worked with the CIA, but he worked against the CIA, so he knows how they operate. Okay, so you could just see in the body language, Putin's body language and Tucker's body language, a lot of things. And you can see here how intensely Tucker was just staring at Putin like a laser beam. Okay, look at his eyes here. He didn't blink at all. He was just staring at him like a laser. Okay. So he gave a 30-minute long history lesson of Eastern Europe. But like I said, what was most interesting is that he mentioned this 1654 peace agreement with Poland, where after 13 years of war with Poland, Russia agreed with Poland that they would get the eastern part of Ukraine, east of the Dnieper, and Poland would get west of the Dnieper. And he was basically trying to say that because of that agreement 400 years ago, that Russia is still entitled to the eastern parts of Ukraine. He basically said that Ukraine is not a real country in so many words. He said he wants the West to negotiate. You know, I'm kind of just summarizing. He didn't directly say that, but, you know, after 2 hours of watching, that's more or less what he wanted. He claimed that Ukraine's not a real country and the West should negotiate. And Tucker Carlson actually asked Putin, would you pick up the phone and call Biden to prevent a nuclear war? And Putin basically said, no, because we have nothing to talk about. You know, the West is the one who started this and it's up to them to fix it. So I'm not going to call and beg for this to end when it's not my fault, it's their fault. So he feels like, you know, he has no reason to call Biden. And so, in other words, Putin would go to nuclear war, is what basically, in so many words, that's kind of what Putin was saying, that he's not going to call Biden and he's just going to let it go to nuclear war. And he also claims that Boris Johnson was responsible for canceling the peace negotiations in Istanbul. And he said he was ready for negotiations. He also claims that NATO was going to set up bases in Ukraine, or that they already had bases in Ukraine, and that's why he invaded Ukraine. He said that there was a coup in 2014 sponsored by the CIA and that it wasn't really a revolution. He also added that the war in Ukraine was a civil war and that Ukraine and Russia would eventually be reunited again. And Tucker Carlson also grilled Putin about his Christianity, which is very interesting because a lot of Tucker's followers, you know, the pro Russian crowd, they think that Putin is fighting for Christianity around the world. And Tucker actually challenged Putin on his faith. And he basically straight up asked him, how can you be a Christian if you kill people? And how he justifies that. And that was just crazy when he asked Putin that. You can even see like Putin getting mad. Like he kind of got mad for a second. And even a couple of the questions, almost every question, you could see Putin kind of got mad initially, like when he heard what Tucker said. But he basically straight up asked Putin, how can you be a Christian if you're killing people in Ukraine? And how do you justify that? And Putin said that it's out of self defense and that he's protecting Russians and he's ensuring the survival of Russia. And he mentioned the situation in the Donbass where supposedly Ukraine was killing civilians and there was a genocide going on. So that was his response to that. Tucker also asked him about AI, and Putin said that apparently Elon Musk had already implanted a chip in someone's brain in the US. He also said that there's now science that can engineer super soldiers and superhumans, super athletes. Very interesting. He also said that there needs to be an international agreement on AI so there's no global catastrophe from it, such as a nuclear war like a Terminator situation. Tucker also asked him about Zelensky, and Putin said that when he met Zelensky in person, he referenced Volodya is what he called Zelensky in person. Volodya, that's like a kind of like a pet name that you would call a friend or something. He was trying to like talk to Zelensky in a friendly way, and he said, Volodya, why are you supporting neo-Nazis, the same people who your father fought against in World War II? And he was referencing Zelensky's father, who was a soldier in World War II who fought against the Nazis. And he said he thinks that Zelensky is a puppet of America and will basically do whatever America says. And that Zelensky's also afraid to stand up to the Ukrainian nationalists, who he calls neo Nazis. And because of that, Zelensky's basically kind of in a tough position and he has to constantly maintain this strong anti Russian stance. Putin said he was mad about U.S. airstrikes in Yugoslavia. He also accused the U.S. of funding terrorists in Chechnya and the uprising in Chechnya. He also was mad that the U.S. wanted to set up the missile defense in Europe, and eventually they did. And also the expansion of NATO. He mentioned the agreement with NATO after the fall of the USSR. He said that NATO was not supposed to expand an inch to the east at all. And he said that NATO basically, stabbed Russia in the back, essentially. So he's basically invalidating half of the NATO alliance. Basically, all the former Warsaw Pact countries he believes should not be in NATO and they should be neutral. He said that invading Ukraine initially was because of the coup in 2014, but then he said that the Ukrainian operation in Donbass, supposedly the bombing of civilians in the Donbass and threatening Crimea, and how Zelensky was not honoring the Minsk agreements anymore, was the reason why he ended up going into Ukraine. He blamed Poland for being cruel to Ukrainians when Ukraine was under Polish control hundreds of years ago. And he said Poland tried to destroy the Ukrainian national identity. And Tucker Carlson asked him, what are the goals of the operation in Ukraine and has he achieved the goals? And he said that all the goals have been achieved with the exception of denazification. And Tucker Carlson grilled him on that, and he responded by saying, that denazification means that there's still Nazis in Ukraine, according to Putin, that cheer for Bandera, and that the self-identity of Ukraine is rooted in Nazism, is essentially what he was saying. So I don't know if that's like a justification for a genocide. That he was basically saying that Ukrainian people all support Bandera, okay, and that all Ukrainians are Nazis, okay. So that's kind of nuts. That's kind of crazy. And so Tucker was basically pushing back on him and asking him, what is denazification? What does that mean? And he basically just said that, the Ukrainian self-identity is rooted in Nazism. So I don't know, if that makes Putin feel like, he has a right to go in and, take over the whole country. I have no idea, guys, but that's very concerning. He also claims that Zelensky applauded Hitler in the Canadian Parliament. And he also mentioned an agreement in Istanbul between Russia and Ukraine, where Ukraine agreed that Nazism would not be allowed in Ukraine. And so he was again accusing Ukraine of basically being like a Nazi state, which is just totally insane. And he said he would only attack Poland if Poland attacked Russia. He said he was not interested in attacking Poland and that this was fear mongering. He said it was absolutely out of question. However, he also blamed Poland for having the most amount of mercenaries in Ukraine. He said Poland was the number one country as far as the number of mercenaries in Ukraine. Poland has the most. And then after that, he said the US. And then after that, Georgia. And he emphasized that any country that would send regular troops into Ukraine would bring about a global conflict. And Tucker grilled Putin about the Nordstream pipeline incident. And he asked why, if Putin has evidence that the West blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, why didn't he display that evidence in Russia for all Russians to see? And he specifically said that it would make a propaganda victory for Russia. And basically, he was kind of questioning whether Putin really truly had evidence that the West was responsible for the Nord Stream pipeline. He was kind of, uh, you know, doubting that Putin had that evidence, because he was saying, if you have this evidence, you claim to have evidence that the West was responsible, why don't you make it into a big propaganda victory? He also asked if BRICS was in danger of being dominated by China, and Putin shrugged it off and said that that's just another boogeyman story. So basically, he was asking Putin if he thinks that China is going to become, the center of power of BRICS, and all the other BRICS countries are just going to become satellites or vassals of China, which is a very valid question. Here we have a picture that was sent to me by a subscriber in southwestern Pennsylvania near the border with West Virginia, and he saw 3 military planes in the air in this area that he frequents, and he says this is extremely unusual. Looks to me like C-130s, but I'm getting a lot of emails from people around the country saying that they're seeing weird stuff in the sky. So our military is on high alert, guys. As you saw, okay, U.S. nuclear forces are on high alert. We have nuclear war command and control planes in the air today. We have a presidential doomsday plane that was just in the air. So, one last thing before I go, I want to mention my website, because last night in the live stream, a lot of people were asking me questions about nuclear war. So, I have a lot of information on my website about nuclear war, including nuclear war targets in Canada, Europe, and the US. And I also have some reference information on halving thicknesses, shielding, various things, okay, radiation doses. So check out my website for free information on nuclear war survival. I also have an entire playlist on nuclear war survival with like 51 videos. So check that out. Watch my videos first before you ask me questions, because a lot of the questions that people ask are common questions. And I've actually made like several videos called Nuclear War Frequently Asked Questions. I'm going to do some more of them, but I've done like probably 10 videos on nuclear war frequently asked questions. So check those videos first before you ask me, because then I just have to constantly repeat myself the answers to basic questions. So watch my videos first and then ask me questions later. But that's pretty much it, guys. I'll be back later on tonight with more breaking news. So make sure you're subscribed. Hit the bell icon down below so you get notified when I post these updates. And until then, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.